It's a real pleasure to be able to talk with you this afternoon. I'm going to be focusing in this talk on another example of a cancer risk factor, obesity, which really is relatively recent when you look at the scheme of cancer prevention science, and yet it's becoming increasingly important as we realize just what obesity is doing in terms of cancer and many other chronic diseases. So what do we mean by obesity? You start out, you hear that term, and you think, what does that mean? The technical definition that people would use in defining this medically is having a body mass index, which is called BMI, of 30% or more. Okay, so that still is a little bit abstract, I think, to people in the audience who may not be using this on a daily basis. What it basically means is that people weigh too much relative to how tall they are. It greatly increases chances of a lot of cancers. Breast cancer, yes, definitely linked with obesity, endometrial cancer, kidney cancer, esophageal cancer, colon cancer, and probably more. As I said, it hasn't even been studied that much, and chances are we're going to be finding out more about risk factors as we learn more about cancer causes. It isn't kind of any kind of fat is equally dangerous, particularly abdominal fat, the kind that accumulates around the waist, is the kind of fat that seems to be particularly dangerous. And of course, it does affect other diseases as well, not only cancer, but also diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and others. So what affects obesity? How come it happens? Well, standard factors are sedentary living. People are sitting around, not moving as much. They're eating high energy dense foods. And that again is a little bit of a technical term, energy dense, which is pretty much like high calorie. There's a lot of calories per the amount that you're eating. And these are all fed into, so to speak, a little tiny bit of a pun there, by sugary drinks, fast food, and a lot of TV watching, which is very common in our society. The factors that decrease obesity are low energy dense foods, so foods that aren't high calorie, being breastfed, and physical activity of all types. It isn't only one kind of physical activity. You don't have to run a marathon. Just being active in any way makes a difference. So we know these things affect obesity, but what can we do about it in terms of translating what we know here into ways of helping people to either prevent becoming obese or becoming less obese? To address this issue, we really need to think at a lot of levels. It isn't just about an individual, so you or me, us changing our behavior. That happens in the context of our family and friends. A lot of times what we do is affected by our social environment. And that takes place further in a larger community, broader community that we live in, that we interact in, and the culture, the values that we may have grown up with, which further are in an environment, and I'm particularly thinking of the physical environment, thinking about the world outside. And then finally, the government is something that really is helping to regulate all of these aspects of our lives and has a role to play in the whole obesity epidemic. So the individual, what can we do if we're trying to think about an individual and what they can do about obesity? Well, some of it's providing people with information. You give people information about proper nutrition, alternate food preparation methods that maybe result in lower calorie alternatives. Becoming more physically active can happen at any age, and it can start now. And you can make a difference. It's within your power as an individual to make a change in your life. Self-monitoring tools have been found to be very helpful. Social support, looking at ways of getting support as an individual. Interventions that are directed at the whole family are important. And then finally, going to where people are. Okay, where do people spend their time? Supporting the role of prevention in healthcare and the whole healthcare continuum is a very important way that we could make a difference. It's important to consider that we're not all the same. We all have different heritages and have their own cultural values that are reflected in what they eat, what they think, the practices that they undertake, the roles that people play in their families, and what's seen as a traditionally appropriate leadership role for men versus women. All those kinds of things are really very important to consider when you're thinking of ways of increasing positive behaviors. In summary, I wanted to say that obesity is an important cause of cancer. It's preventable. But being able to prevent it or reverse it really requires attention at a lot of different levels, not only individuals, but also the community, the nation, and the whole context in which we live. And when you have interventions that go together, that are complementary at these different levels, the effects are really synergistic. So you can't just do something only at the individual, only raising a tax. Things have to go together. One individual level intervention, one community level intervention, you really put them together, and that's where we're going to see the payoff, the change, and the results of having healthier British Columbia.